We we love space technology and we love what it represents in terms of opportunity. And we also equally like paper technology. I don't know about you guys, but Ola and most of you have an iPad, but still sometimes paper's pretty hard to beat. And it's pretty hard to beat for what we're going to do next. And if you guys want to turn to, it is the fourth to last page. And it looks like this. I will give you a warp speed introduction, if you will, to how you can bring this kind of highly visionary thinking back into your strategy process within your firm today. It doesn't matter if you're Statoil, Nosy. Because one of the challenges that we have with strategy is most companies have an overly focus on their existing core business. And one of the tools that we are busy developing, and we've been running several iterations on this, and we've been testing it across different industries in different countries, is what we call 3 levels of business models. Some of you are familiar with this, excellent. The milk and bread category, that is your core business. It's where you have most of your profits and most of your focus. The consulting section, that's where you have your slightly more challenging projects. And the swing for the fences, as it says, is where you develop your most ambitious thinking. So far, very easy. I will run you through Google. Now, what is Google's business? That's pretty easy. It's search and advertising. So if you take Google here and you have Google core business, and most of us know it, most of it use it on a daily basis. It currently represents between 86 and 87% of Google revenue, and they are terrified. They're terrified because they know, and they use this phrase internally, at any given time we are 18 months from extinction. It means that at any given time a new search engine will be launched and it will overtake Google in less than 18 months. That's what happened when they launched against Alta Vista. So Google has this mechanism that they are continuously looking for their next core business. And they have mechanisms for this. This is the architecture. They have Google Ventures, and they have Google X, and other, but I'll just keep it at those two. So if you have this architecture in place, and then we look at the business models. Now, for the sake of simplicity, if you are well versed in business models, keep it at a business model level. If your introduction to it, just keep it to what kind of business could we do? That is as basic as you could. What kind of business could we do? So, Google innovates and develop Gmail. You know, not very market creating at the time, but it was very important to Google. They develop Chrome. They develop Android. And these are all important innovations to expand the core of Google. Then it gets slightly more interesting. Some of you are very familiar with what happened with Nest, which is now turning into be a significant investment for Google to get into the homes. Few of you might be familiar with Google Robotics. Google is currently purchasing as many robotics companies as they can get their hands on in the US, most of them coming out of Boston and MIT. And if you go online and you go on YouTube, which is owned by Google, and you search up robot dogs, for instance, you will find a lot of current robotics projects owned and run and funded by Google. But they're into high-flying energy generation. They're into, and Gunnar, I've noticed you're now wearing it today, glass. And they are, as an infrastructure provider, developing Google cars. And could we see Lisa develop a, smart car infrastructure? I've talked over with Toril, and she says, yes, it's something that we're thinking about. And then, of course, they say, we need to provide Wi-Fi broadband to the rest of the world. We develop the Google Loon project. And if that doesn't work, we will develop the Google drone, which is the Google Wing project. And then we're going to solve most of humanity's medical issues by Calico. And then recently, as most of you probably have seen, they go out and they co-invest $1 billion in SpaceX. So what's the core business of Google? It is constant transition. That's your job. We're going to put the timer on. This is where it gets fun. We're going to put the timer on 7 minutes. And that leaves us time to go through at least 2, maybe even 3 cycles around the table. So in groups of 2, you can work in the same groups that you did, or if you want to mix and match, you find a different group, and try to map out what could be our stepping stones towards a very different core business that, in the case of Nosy, equally could end up in a space economy. I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm not saying you have to convince the board, but for your mentality, indulge yourself in this kind of format. We're going to put 7 minutes, that's plenty of time, groups of 2, have fun.
Interfacen der.
It actually started with the Actio, so the fiber
So as you notice, 7 minutes, it's actually quite plentiful in terms of time. We're going to give you one more round of 5 minutes, which is equally plentiful. And I want you to focus on one key word, one key term that we introduced this morning, and it's what we call explorative investments. It means that's the logic behind Google, because Google knows that these things probably aren't going to be the next core business, but they know that by making a number of explorative investments, fairly small sums in very different industries, and then provide the backing, the power, the speed, intelligence of Google, they might develop these into significant new business areas, explorative investments. So now we do one more round. You can choose the company around the table. The question is, what kind of explorative investments can you do based on things that we've been hearing today and that you'd like to see happen? 5 minutes, plenty of time. Enjoy. If everyone can just look this way. No, this is exactly what we're looking for. Just like hold that pose. Stian, you're beautiful in any angle. No, seriously. Because, I mean, you have it's after lunch, Norwegian time, and you have sort of intensity in your discussion. It's like, I can't destroy that. So whatever you do afterwards, we have wine to facilitate it. What you just did in 7 minutes, 5 minutes, shouldn't be possible because what you're talking about is so difficult and so complex that you need, ages and months. And the way that most companies think about strategy is a little bit like that. We spend very little time thinking very differently and working very differently. And some of you know this, but Elizabeth and I founded this company about 3.5 years ago on a beach in Brazil, trying to answer the question that, now that we're on a beach and we need to do something else, what should we do? So we did this. And everything that's followed since has been a part of that. But what we're very passionate about is to take the field of strategy and the field of innovation, bring them together and toolify them. We don't need more research, really. We don't need more books, but we need to simplify it to the extreme. And in your booklets, you have a couple of other tools. And we are continuously, and seriously continuously, testing, prototyping, testing, and you guys just went through a live test. It's the first time we've ever tried the designing a transformation tool. Worked pretty nice. And if you want to learn more, this is a workshop, what we call a development workshop. It's a maximum 15 people. It'll be in here in a month. And it's basically to test out some of the new stuff that we are working on. And we do these maybe 2 times a year. And if any of you want to join, curious to get in, talk to Inger Hanne or email her. You will get this when we mail stuff out. But the higher goal, if you will, is to help visualize very complex matters into simple, easy-to-use tools like you have in front of you. Some of them work really well, some are work in progress, and you guys are the guinea pigs, and you look really good at it. On that note, we are kind of getting there, as in there is the wine. Before we get to the wine, I'm going to invite up Jim, Rob, Erica, and Bo to join me in this little panel. Now, in the program, it says kind of panel debate, but we can't possibly have a debate. You know, they're all friendly people with friendly faces. We'll make it more of a discussion. So if you guys want to just come up and join me on stage, and we'll facilitate a little discussion among you and also among you guys. And Rob, I know that you'll be leaving, so we'll give you the first couple of minutes. Rob's on a tight schedule getting here and an even tighter schedule getting out of here. Ian, can you bring the microphones? So our program runs until 5. After 5, we'll open the bar. First time ever. We probably don't even have a license for that, so don't tweet it. It's a big deal. Big deal in Norway. Yeah, they'll get you like locked up. I'm in charge. And you can stay around for as long as you want. There's no dinner scheduled, but the way it works, several of you are staying overnight, and if you want to grab dinner with anybody, you know, the wine will facilitate, you know how it works. Before that, let's have a discussion. I'll introduce these guys. You know Jim, the hyper-visionary space dude with a totally doable business plan. Really. I mean, yeah, the way you present it, it's like, well, yeah, of course. Erica is the hyper-visionary strategist who she has an education in law, which she doesn't need anymore.
Don't hold it against me.
No, it's more of a, it explains why it took you so long to get where you are. We need more of her. When she was in Stavanger last time, she had a TEDx talk on we need more Superman. Well, she is now officially a superwoman, which is kind of cool. You need a cape. Rob, you heard, he is really the corporate entrepreneur, and I can't believe that you've spent 37 years with a company that changed. It's incredible, and I'll give the microphone to you in just a second. And then I want to introduce the Norwegian. Boy Johansen has a long history within the Norwegian industrial side of the oil and gas industry. And he's been CEO of several companies, including Actio Exploration, correct? That's the past. He's currently the chairman of the board of Zaptec. Now, some of you know Zaptec, some of you know it really well. Zaptec is a technology startup with business model in the world's greatest electric car charger and Mars drilling, which is, it's totally doable if you just do it and care to do it and choose to do it, and you have ESA and NASA paying for it. And Boris sort of, from a Norwegian side, seen the oil and gas industrial structures, and he's now spending his time and energy, sort of a sidetrack, building and running a factory in Malaysia, but that's a sidetrack, but heading up the development of Zaptec, which recently won the Innovation Award here in Stavanger. So we kind of have a mix. So we're going to have a dialogue, and I'll give this off to you, Rob. What are your reflections on the day? And then we're going to go to Bor. We're just going to test the microphone here for a second.
Let me first thank you for inviting me. I thought it is an honor to be invited here. And I liked it. Of course, I will miss the wine tonight, but I had a lot of good wine yesterday, which made me sleep very well. So that point is made. Everything well organized. I think my table colleague knows that if we're really getting into the discussion, how can I help? I get a lot of passion, and I almost wanted to join him in the window and door business, because suddenly lots of ideas came up. And I truly believe that for the longer term, mining into space is backed up with a true business model. because there will be scarcities and materials will at a certain moment be not enough at the earth. And I started with oil and you showed everything where there are peak curves, right? Including phosphates, which is very important because my bones, your bones are made of phosphates. And at a certain moment there will be no phosphates anymore. So the 20 billion people probably will not happen. Yeah? In your case, I have trouble in seeing a business model, and I can tell you I will not opt for going outside this earth for extraterrestrial visits, because there are so many problems here at the earth, so many challenges to be solved, that I rather put my energy, passion on those instead of escaping from the world for prestigious reasons. And finally, I just want to say I liked it, and it's a pity that I have to do something else tomorrow with bureaucrats in Brussels, but I promised, so I keep my promise.
Well, I think we speak on behalf of everyone on this table and outside that you're always welcome back. And anybody need a member of the board to join from a different perspective? He has a little bit of time on his hands. Thanks. Now I'm gonna direct a question to Paul. You've seen the industrial side. You're now seeing the startup side. Subtech has interest in space, in water, in electric car. What's your biggest sort of reflection from today so far?
First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers here earlier today. It's been very enjoyable. I appreciate being invited and being able to participate here. Yes, you're right. I'm coming from corporate world. Actually, I finished that 5 years ago and started then for myself. The biggest difference when you're starting up a company, at least the way we done it in Subtech, and just shortly for those of you who don't know Subtech very well, we actually transforming, the source of energy to usable energy for people, basically electricity. We've made, instead of a big truck sizable transformer, we make a small one. It's even electronic, it's smart, and you can have it in your hand and you can provide all the energy you need. So that is the short version of it. It's a very old technology. It's Ohm's law. But it's transforming, energy from sun, from oil, from whatever you like, into usable energy for people worldwide. So it's more like democratization of energy. That's basically what the goal is. The biggest difference by sitting in a major company to a small company is that you can select your friend. You can have a same vision, a same value, where you actually want to solve a specific need people have, and energy people need, and not only up here but all over the world. And you also mentioned a very specific issue in addition to that. I'm coming from the oil industry, but my ambition going into this industry now is that the water will be the next oil industry in the world. And we have actually technology now to clean water wherever you want, from sea, from sewage, from whatever. So that's an important part of our business in addition to providing energy. So those two elements are the key mission for us, in addition to drill on Mars. But that's like, the spacey vision we have just for our CEO, which is fun of that, to present that. Back to your question. The biggest thing is that what you learn, and I think Rob said that in his presentation, what you learn when you have new technology, don't speak with his chief financial officer. That's rules number one, because we don't develop new products on spreadsheets. You can, when you learn, I put companies to IPOs, I know what it is. So I learned the language from those people. If you're going to do like Subtech is doing that, we would have not been successful if we have had the CFO in the starting point. We have a CFO now, but that's for actually keeping track, because now we're talking to the banks. That's one rule. I should also say that we are 17 investors, the major investors sitting here on my left side over here. We put 35 million kroner just for the first contract. And we've been able to do that because we have a very clear vision to, the market for this product is, and you can have thousands of them. So what we did, we selected when the market was clear for us what it was, we went to the customer directly. And the customer is Renault, which on behalf of the car industry has the task to solve the charging of electric cars. So last year when we discharged the oil industry because they were too slow to participate in that, because in fact what we needed to do was to put this downhole for production technology. So now we are actually in the car industry instead. That's done the last year. And Renault searched the whole world to find the company who was able to do this. And we had the 2 or 3 main people in the world, turned out to be, actually solving this problem. So we solved the car industry's charging problems for car. And also the new batteries coming. Because the electrical car will be a very important part of the environmental development in the world, because all the major cities need to clean the air. And one way of doing that is to have car with no fuels, with diesel and so on. So what we did, and in fact Renault told us, who actually owns Nissan, told us that we were the only one who were able to solve it. And we made it, and we have a contract, and we're going to deliver now the chargeable for the cars. And in addition to that, we're also going to provide technology already done, already made, to put it into houses for charging cars home, where 99% of the charging will take place. So that will be also an important part of our business. That means that we now talking to the bank, we know extra money in share capitals, because we have the contract and we were able to do that. And I'm pretty sure, working with major companies before that, if we have had, financial driven type of development, the owner and the main investors will have been diluted very much before we're coming to the end point. And the people working for us in the board, including yourself, we have all sorts of background from the people, which is also very important. We have financial people now, but we also have technical people, and we also have market people, and we also have people with different background in the industry to be able to push this. And I must say that we started 2 years ago, and now already have the first product signed. I think is a major achievement. And I should also say that we've been very focused in Innovation Norway, which is actually wants to use us as some sort of a company which has succeeded in a way which we all know. The key thing now is that the industry here, Zaptec is actually coming out of the oil industry. And we have no oil companies as a customer at the moment, which is also an interesting experience after 2 years of this. So this was a long answer to your questions, but I think that was the key message for a newcomer like us.
But it's also an interesting question. Jim, I'll share this with the audience. Yesterday you said, I think I'm turning into an oil man. What? Rob, you have your taxi waiting? Okay, well, we will thank you for coming, and a really, really good welcome. Back next time. So, Jim, you haven't been to this part of Norway ever, and you haven't been back to Norway since 1993. It's ages ago. There are technology revolutions happening, and then you used to be the space guy, and now you're an oil man. What's that about?
So I think I would expand upon the last couple of slides that I gave in the presentation on this point, and I think it's quite fascinating, and it's a moment where these assumptions of what I'm thinking are working in real time. Yesterday and today, and I think for the next few days. and I shall sound it out with some colleagues as well over the coming days and enjoy the experience of the response, I'm sure. But the way I see it is, it became very clear just in actually the meetings. I've never been in meetings that had such a impactful strategic effect on my outlook. And particularly what was interesting was the oil industry, or the sector, as I understand it. I'm reasonably familiar with the mining sector, and I assume there is a certain similarity between mining sector and the oil and gas sector in terms of some core values and core objectives. But the technologies that they're using, the processes that are being used, I saw less as specifically focused on the product, but more focused on the process. And when you're not tied emotionally to the product, and someone tells you, we're building this autonomous drilling rig for, seabed oil mining, or oil extraction, I hear building autonomous robotic system for operations. The kind of oil thing kind of falls out of my earshot, and I'm just getting these topological factors of what it does. And it suddenly started dawning on me that even the way I was looking at the sector as a potential partner to come in and partner with us in the space sector as the core directive, actually might be the other way round. It may be that just like you might have a very large robotic system, and the control unit and the logic of operations is maybe a small box that sits in the unit and connects via an interface to the whole system that's 100 times bigger. It could be that the space sector and the energy and mining infrastructure sectors have the same relationship, that we're actually maybe just a core box of directives and recommendations and transfer of the knowledge that we have and the know-how that we have. And it's a case of, okay, guys, let's take this $500 billion experience that you developed over the last 20 years of the latest technologies, and let's reapply it here, here, and here. This is the revenue model. These are the business opportunity. This is the strategic advantage. This is where it expands to. And I think there's something profound in this, because as far as my understanding goes, the efforts that oil companies have been making to get into renewables or get into solar or wind or something, it kind of makes me scratch my head, because, all right, I think it might make good PR, it might make good marketing that we're a green company and we're in renewables and this and that. And yes, the end product is energy. But it's like saying, I was talking about this yesterday, it was like saying to a tomato farmer, okay, you're running out of land to grow your tomatoes, but I recommend that you take up synthetic biology and open up a lab and grow tomatoes in a hydroponic system with synthetic biological augmentation and undertake this. And the guy's a farmer, and he knows how to basically sow the land, and work the land. Totally different skill set and route to the same product set. And that's what I feel the oil sector is kind of under the same conundrum when they're trying to work out what to do with renewables. That they're being asked, or maybe the fashion is to get into this when it's a completely different sector and a completely different field and supply chain. And all of the heavy industrial know-how that they developed has practically zero applicability. That doesn't make sense, and I think it's not necessary. And I think there is a massive gap, that the fact that I'm only just realizing it means that it must be a very, very new concept, he says. But very interesting times.
Erika, is he always like that?
Yes.
You guys are on a magnificent journey, and I think there's many here who wants to join somehow. And of course, she represents the banks. not the biggest, well, the biggest one in the city, at least. So if we were going to make this a space city, she would be a good person to start out with. Erika, you come from a traditional background. You have a law degree. You traveled into McKinsey for a couple of years. You started Hypervisionary Ventures in the Middle East. You now run, global chief strategy officer for, this Hypervisionary Ventures. There's quite a number of young people here, far more than we expected, which is an excellent thing. And the tools that we develop, we call them strategy tools for the next generation, because we think that it's the next generation of leaders that's going to get this. Erika, what would you, based on your experiences with law education and McKinsey and the corporate world and now what you're doing, what would you recommend, the ones mentally below 50 and maybe physically around 35 and less, what should they be doing with their brains as opposed to what they're doing now?
Well, I don't know what they're doing now. I'd take up, basic physics. I mean, there's so many opportunities to learn. I'm actually considering taking up graduate degrees in engineering myself to augment the massive failure that was going to law school. But yeah, I mean, I think today I'd probably take physics, I'd take artificial intelligence, I'd take maybe nanotech, just to broaden your horizon, because most of the things that are going to be happening in the next 20, 30 years in terms of, exciting technological developments, they're all crossovers. So as a minimum, you just have to have a basis, so that you're equipped to keep your eyes and, mind open. Because, I keep thinking about the slide that Rob showed. Was a 20-year transformation of DSM from coal to material sciences and life sciences. And I just kept sitting there and wondering, like, if we had to draw, 20 years into the future, looking back, and we had to draw the same for oil and gas sectors as a sector, or we had to do the same as, for space sector as a sector, I think it's going to look very different on both counts. And as Jim was saying, they could be the same things with all sorts of other things added in that we're not even conceiving of at the moment, right? I mean, I'm sure, we're not going to do space without biology. That's like, not possible for real. Not just computers and rockets, but actually life forms in space. So yeah, as broad as possible. That's I would keep myself.
And read and follow Erika's Twitter feed.
Which is also connected to Facebook. Paul, you want to follow up on that?
There is one thing more should add to Erika's comment, is that there's a saying that all good things are thought before. And one thing should be part of the education is philosophy. I mean, the way of thinking, the way of keeping track with the facts and history and all that is a very important part of the education. So even if you do all your technology education, you should also swap into some courses of philosophy.
While you're at it, mixing philosophy, space, new space, and the Norwegian industry, what would be your advice, Paul, to Jim and Erika, sort of making progress with Norwegian companies? Because we really want to see Norwegian companies getting into this and really join this race. What would be your advice to them?
I think there's a lot, in this town here in Stavanger and a few other major hubs in Norway, there's a lot of technology and very bright people sitting there who has been participating over the last 40 years where the oil industry has been improving. And also remember, it's like space industry, just to use that. I mean, it's a lot of products coming out of the space industry. And also, I think Subtech is, part of the oil industry, but we don't work with the oil industry per se as we do today. So there's a lot of technology in there which can be actually utilized in whatever fancy type of project coming up. I think also, if you go to the university here in Norway, I mean, there's because of the oil industry is challenged by the environmentalists, and also the government is looking for new type of industry in Norway, replacing the oil industry. There's a lot of talents at the university also here in Norway which can be utilized in this type of new thinking, to put it that way, which I think is an important part also.
And I think I'm quoting Erica's Twitter feed when I say Google just gave a 5 million prize to the latest Google Lunar X Prize project. So if you want to win $5 million, it's just to join the Google Lunar X Prize. Well, there'll be more. That sort of thing. And join his courses at Singularity. You're still involved with it?
I'm involved with it.
Yeah.
I have less time to do anything else but chaperoning, sport, transparency. But it's a good team there.
Yeah. I'll ask you to summarize the day, if you will, if you can, in 1 or 2 sentences. Erica, you can start, and then we'll... No, that's easy. I mean, these guys will get the same question in about 30 seconds, so inspire them.
I mean, it's banal, but it's true. Anything is possible. I think if that's something I learned both working with Jim, but also kind of today. Walking in here, I didn't think I'd be ever excited about something as trivial as doors and windows, and I found myself being on the edge of the seat, looking forward to the products. I was telling Ivan that we should, can you get going now? Because I'd like to replace my windows and doors with all these wonderful things they're going to make. So, yeah, definitely anything's possible. Yeah, that would be my summary.
I think the key thing is to think out of the box. That's a key challenge for, getting new ideas, is to challenge yourself, your concepts and everything, which is very important.
I think for me, what is dawning on me is the parallel or comparison between a small innovative organization and a large mature organization and the different stages they're at. And if I was to kind of try and track it with something I heard in the context of Shakespeare, I remember there was once a birthday card I gave to a teacher decades ago, and it said that sex and Shakespeare were very much in tune with each other, and it had 7 decades of life. And in your teens, the play that was quoted was A Comedy of Errors. In your 20s, it was As You Like It. I can't remember 30s and 40s, 50s, but then in something like 50s, it was Much Ado About Nothing. And in your 70s, it was A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I'm kind of thinking about innovation in this context as well. When you think about innovation, for a small company, it can be at the start of when you're going forward, it can be a comedy of errors. You're making mistakes, you don't have best practice, you don't necessarily know how to do things. And that comedy of errors could actually occasionally spring out a world-beating innovation, sometimes by chance, sometimes by design. As you progress further into this field, and you get older, or the company gets bigger, the idea of innovation it progresses on, and it seems to become a little more, well, it's Much Ado About Nothing. We've already got our mature markets. We already know what we're doing, and to the point where you can see an organization becoming so risk averse and so ossified in its strategic leadership that the idea of innovating in anything really radical is A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's a long time away, and it even gets to the point where the solution to this is, well, we're not going to innovate. We'll try and nurture other little groups around us to innovate, and then cherry pick, but we won't give them any time to do it. We'll give them a 6 or 18, 24 month window of opportunity to try and innovate something radical, and cherry pick that. So it's an interesting, that for me was an interesting context, and I think highlighted by some of the discussions we've had here. And it does show that however radical the sector might be, however demanding it might be, you can never be surprised or complacent about how, not necessarily scared, but how limited the strategic leadership of some organizations can be once they get to a certain size and their constraints are so strong that they're afraid to make a decision to be bold again. That was interesting. Be bold.
Be bold. Guys, thank you for joining us on stage. You'll be here for the wine and the conversations. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian.